April 1942. The Pacific was bleeding, and America had nowhere to strike. One man, Jimmy Doolittle, dared the impossible, launching Army bombers from a Navy carrier straight into the heart of Japan. 16 planes, overloaded with bombs and fuel, teetered on the edge of death as storm winds tore across the flight deck. Every takeoff a gamble, every mile over enemy waters a countdown. Tokyo slept unaware, until the sky ignited with fire and smoke. Factories burned, streets panicked, and an empire that had never known defeat finally felt fear. But for the men behind the controls, the fight was far from over. Fuel ran out, parachutes opened, and the night swallowed heroes whole. Some were lost, some captured, but every drop of blood, every sacrifice, carved a path to vengeance and hope. This was not just a raid, it was the spark that would ignite an avalanche. April 18, 1942, the perilous dawn launch. Aboard the USS Hornet, Task Force 16, heaving through storm-swept swells in the North Pacific, 650 miles east of Japan. Salt spray lashes the flight deck like machine gun fire, the wind howling at 40 knots, whipping whitecaps into froth below. Lieutenant Colonel James "Jimmy" Doolittle, 45 years old, aviation pioneer turned warrior, straps into the cockpit of his B-25B Mitchell bomber, call sign Army 402344. His hands, steady from years of test piloting daredevilry, grip the yoke. The deck pitches wildly up, down, like a bucking bronco in the gale. You can almost feel the vibration through the airframe, the roar of twin Wright R2600 engines drowning out the crash of waves. No room for error. The carrier's deck is too short for these land-based bombers. They've stripped them down, added fuel tanks, but takeoff? It's a calculated suicide run. Doolittle glances back at his crew navigator Hank Potter, bombardier Fred Bramer, engineer Paul Leonard, gunner Ed Horton. Their faces are pale masks in the dim light, eyes wide with the unspoken question, will we even clear the bow? The signal flag drops. Doolittle firewalls the throttles. The B-25 lurches forward, tires thumping over the wet planking, accelerating into the teeth of the wind. The deck crew scatters as the props chew the air. 50 feet. 100. The bow rushes up like a cliff's edge. Then lift. The bomber dips sickeningly toward the sea, skimming the waves by inches, before clawing skyward. Cheers erupt from the Hornet's island, but Doolittle doesn't hear them. He's focused on the horizon, where Japan waits, oblivious. Behind him, 15 more B-25s follow, one by one, engines screaming defiance against the storm. Captain Ted Lawson in The Ruptured Duck. Captain Dean Hallmark in Green Hornet. Each takeoff a heart-stopping gamble, planes overloaded with 2,000 pounds of bombs and extra fuel for the day. One-way trip to China. This isn't just a mission. It's America's first counterpunch after Pearl Harbor's gut-wrenching betrayal. 4 months earlier, December 7, 1941, the Imperial Japanese Navy had shattered the Pacific Fleet at anchor, killing 2,403 Americans in a blaze of torpedoes and bombs. The nation reeled, humiliated, enraged. President Franklin D. Roosevelt demanded retaliation, something to pierce the heart of the enemy homeland. Enter Doolittle, the maverick with a doctorate in aeronautics from MIT, who'd set speed records and pioneered instrument flying. Teamed with Navy Captain Francis Lowe, they hatched the impossible. Launch Army bombers from a Navy carrier, strike Tokyo, then ditch in friendly China. No one's ever done it. The crews? Volunteers, handpicked from the 17th Bombardment Group, trained in secrecy at Eglin Field, Florida. Short field takeoffs over sawgrass runways, low-level bombing runs that hug the treetops. They practiced until their muscles ached, knowing the odds: mechanical failure, enemy fighters, fuel starvation over hostile territory. Now, as the last B-25 piloted by Lieutenant Bill Farrow, lifts off the Hornet's bucking deck. The task force turns tail, steaming east to evade Japanese picket boats that spotted those hours earlier. The raid's been forced early 200 miles farther out than planned. Fuel margins razor thin. Doolittle's formation climbs to 200 feet, skimming the waves to dodge radar. The Pacific, a gray blur beneath them. Salt crusts the windshields. The crews huddle in fleece-lined jackets against the chill. Inside the fuselages, the smell of avgas and sweat mixes with the metallic tang of fear. Potter plots the course on his charts northwest toward Honshu. ETA over target, noon. But doubts creep in. Will the Japanese defenses be alerted? Anti-aircraft guns, Zero fighters swarming like angry hornets? And after the bombs fall, the escape over the Sea of Japan into occupied China, where Chiang Kai-shek's nationalists promise safe havens, but the Japanese army prowls. Hours stretch. The bombers drone on, a loose gaggle against the vast ocean. Doolittle's mind races memories of his barnstorming days, pushing planes to their limits. This time, it's not for glory. It's for vengeance, for morale. Back home, headlines scream of Bataan falling, Corregidor besieged. America needs a win. As landfall nears misty islands dotting the horizon, the tension coils tighter. Radios crackle with position checks, but mostly silence reigns. Then, a crewman spots it. Fishing boats, Japanese flags fluttering. Have they been seen? Alarms blare in imaginations. Doolittle pushes the nose down lower, engines straining. Tokyo looms, the Imperial Palace, war factories, and oil depots all ripe for fire. But what if the element of surprise is gone? The first bombs are about to fall, and with them, a shockwave that will ripple through empires. April 18, 1942, the sky over Tokyo ignites. Tokyo, Japan. Clear spring sky, cherry blossoms drifting like pale snow across the rooftops of the imperial capital. Housewives hang laundry on bamboo poles. School children in black uniforms march in perfect rows toward the Sumida River. Emperor Hirohito, inside the mooted palace grounds, sips tea with his advisors, confident that the Pacific is now a Japanese lake. No enemy has touched the sacred soil of the home islands in recorded history. Not once, not ever. Then the air raid sirens begin to howl. At 3,000 feet, Jimmy Doolittle banks his B-25, hard left over the harbor, the city sprawling beneath him like a living map. The Nakajima aircraft factory glints in the noon sun, his primary target. Anti-aircraft bursts bloom black and lazy around the formation. Too low, too slow. The Japanese gunners are firing at ghosts, their predictors set for high-altitude B-17s that never come. Doolittle's voice is calm over the intercom. Bombardier, open bomb bay doors. Fred Bramer flips the switch. The clamshell doors yawn wide, wind screaming through the fuselage. 4 500-pound demolition bombs and one incendiary cluster hang in the racks like steel fruit. Bramer peers through the Norden sight. Target in sight, steady, bombs away. The B-25 lurches upward as 2,000 pounds drop free. Doolittle hauls the bomber into a diving turn, throttle firewalled, racing west at rooftop level. Behind him, the first bombs detonate orange fireballs erupting across the factory roof. Secondary explosions ripping through assembly lines where Zero fighters were being born. Shrapnel scythes through workers running for cover. A mile away, Captain Travis Hoover's plane unloads on an oil refinery. Black smoke billows thousands of feet high, a funeral plume visible from Yokohama. You can almost taste the panic on the streets below. Mothers clutch children, sprinting for shelters that were never meant to be used. A streetcar screeches to a halt as passengers tumble out, staring skyward at the impossible. American bombers, green stars and bars flashing under wings, roaring over the Emperor's palace itself. One crew, Lieutenant Edgar McElroy in Hell's Kitchen, drops so low that Japanese soldiers on the palace wall can see the grinning skull painted on his nose. They fire rifles upward, useless pops against aluminum skin. 14 more B-25s fan out across the Kanto Plain. Yokohama shipyards, Kawasaki chemical plants, Kobe steelworks, Nagoya engine factories. Each target chosen not for maximum destruction. 16 planes can't level a city but for maximum humiliation. The Japanese High Command had promised their people invulnerability behind the divine wind. Now that promise lies in flaming ruins. In a Tokyo radio studio, announcer Tadao Ozaki is mid-broadcast when the building shakes. He drops his script, voice cracking. Enemy planes over the capital. Static swallows the rest. Across the nation, millions freeze at their receivers. The word spreads faster than fire. Gaijin aircraft. Over Tokyo. Over the Emperor. Doolittle's plane streaks west at 300 miles per hour, hedge-hopping across rice paddies. Behind him, the skyline is a jagged silhouette of smoke. His crew whoops over the intercom relief, disbelief, raw joy. They've done it. They've actually done it. But celebration is short-lived. Fuel gauges needle toward empty. The early launch burned precious hours. China is still 700 miles away. Across night, mountains, and Japanese-occupied territory. And somewhere behind them, the Imperial Navy is already scrambling every fighter within 500 miles. As the last B-25 disappears into the haze, a single realization begins to dawn in the war rooms beneath the palace. The Americans didn't just strike. They came, they saw, they left whenever they damn well pleased. And if 16 bombers could do this, how many more are already on the way? April 18, 1942. The Empire's mirror cracks. Imperial Japanese Navy Headquarters, Tokyo. Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki storms into the map room, face the color of dried blood. Papers scatter as he slams a fist onto the chart table. 16 bombers, he roars. 16, and we did nothing. Around him, senior staff officers stand frozen. Captain Minoru Genda, architect of Pearl Harbor, stares at the grease pencil marks showing American flight paths, straight over the palace, over shipyards, over the sacred heart of Japan. No one meets Ugaki's eyes. Outside, the city still burns. Firefighters in indigo happy coats wrestle hoses through streets choked with broken roof tiles. A mother wanders barefoot, clutching a child's wooden sandal, calling a name that will never answer. The smell of burning cedar and aviation fuel drifts across the Ginza like funeral incense. In the palace, Emperor Hirohito receives the news in silence. His chamberlain bows so low, his forehead touches the tatami. The emperor's voice, when it finally comes, is soft as falling ash. They flew directly above my roof. A pause. Then, colder. Explain to me again how the home islands are impregnable. That single sentence detonates like a delayed action bomb through every corridor of power. Midnight. Combined Fleet Commander Isoroku Yamamoto is aboard his flagship Yamato, anchored at Hashirajima. A signal lamp blinks the unthinkable report across the black water. Yamamoto reads it twice, then crumples the flimsy in his fist. He had warned them, warned Tojo, warned the army, warned anyone who would listen, that Japan could not win a prolonged war against America's industrial might. Pearl Harbor was meant to buy time, not awaken a sleeping giant. Now the giant has opened one eye and flicked Japan across the face with a gauntlet. Yamamoto turns to his chief of staff. Order every picket line extended 300 miles, triple the air patrols, and tell Nagumo, tell him personally, that if another American plane so much as photographs a Japanese outhouse, I will have his head. But even as the orders fly, Yamamoto knows the truth. The psychological fortress is already breached. Japanese civilians who once laughed at the idea of enemy bombs now crowd train stations clutching evacuation bundles. School drills shift from fire buckets to air raid trenches. Propaganda loudspeakers that blared, 100 million die together, now sound hollow against the memory of twin-engine shadows roaring overhead at noon. In China, Japanese occupation troops hear the rumors first from terrified collaborators. American bombers have struck the homeland. Morale collapses overnight. Soldiers who boasted of invincibility now glance nervously at the sky. In Nanking, a Kempeitai officer shoots a subordinate for whispering that perhaps the war will be longer than we thought. Back in Tokyo, Prime Minister Hideki Tojo convenes and the room reeks of sweat and fear. One general dares suggest the raid was minor damage. Tojo's reply is a snarl. Minor? They bombed the emperor's capital while our fighters chased seagulls. The people saw it. The world saw it. He slams a newspaper proof on the table. The headline, already prepared for morning distribution, reads, "Enemy raid repulsed. No damage." Tojo rips it in half. Print the truth. Or print nothing. But know this. From tonight forward, every resource, every ship, every plane that was destined for the southern advance will now guard the sacred soil. The Americans have forced our hand. Silence. Then Army Minister Sugiyama speaks the words no one wants to hear. If 16 bombers could reach Tokyo from 650 miles, what can 200 do from Midway? From Wake? From carriers we cannot find? The question hangs like smoke. Because in that moment, every admiral in the room realizes the same terrifying truth. The Doolittle Raid wasn't the end of something. It was the first pebble in an avalanche that will soon bury the empire. April 18, 1942. The night that swallowed heroes. 400 miles west of Tokyo, black Pacific night. Fuel gauges glow red like dying coals. Jimmy Doolittle's B-25 is a ghost in the darkness, engines coughing on the last gallons of 115 octane. The coastline of China should be somewhere ahead, but cloud cover is absolute. No moon, no stars, just the green glow of the instrument panel painting his face corpse pale. Hank Potter's voice is hoarse over the intercom. "We're flying on fumes, Colonel. Maybe 30 minutes left." 30 minutes to find a country the size of a continent in pitch black, with Japanese patrols on every road and every airfield. Doolittle makes the call no one wants to hear. Prepare to bail out. The crew clips on parachutes with fingers numb from cold. Paul Leonard, the engineer who once rebuilt an engine mid-flight over the Andes, now whispers a prayer in Cajun French. They crack the side hatch. Wind rips through the fuselage like a freight train. One by one, they tumble into the void. Potter, Bramer, Leonard, Horton. Doolittle last, the plane on autopilot, nose already dipping. He counts to 5, then yanks the ripcord. Silk blooms above him. The B-25 spirals into the sea with a distant splash, taking his logbook, his lucky leather jacket, and the last physical proof that America struck Tokyo. Across the formation, 15 other crews face the same nightmare. Lieutenant Ted Lawson in The Ruptured Duck fights to keep formation with the others, but the storm that hid them from Japanese fighters now hides China from them. Over the Yangtze estuary, engines quit. Lawson gives the order. His crew bails out over crashing surf. The bomber cartwheels into a rice paddy, wings shearing off like broken arms. Lawson wakes up with his left leg shattered, bone protruding through flight suit, blood hot against the cold mud. Beside him, Gunner Clever lies unconscious, face half torn away by the propeller. Farther north, Dean Hallmark's Green Hornet runs dry over the sea. They ditch at 150 miles per hour. The impact rips the bomber in half. Hallmark and 2 crew swim through burning gasoline, but the navigator never surfaces. One by one, the raiders fall from the sky like dark seeds scattered across Zhejiang province. Some land in pine trees, dangling until Chinese farmers cut them down with rice knives. Others splash into flooded paddies, swallowed by mud to the waist while flashlights bob in the distance. Japanese patrols or Chinese guerrillas? Impossible to tell. In the village of Chuchao, one 9-year-old farmer, John Birch, yes, that John Birch, hears the drone overhead and runs into the night with a lantern. He finds Lieutenant Bill Farrow hanging unconscious from a persimmon tree, parachute tangled like a broken spiderweb. Birch slings the American over his shoulder and staggers toward a hidden cave where nationalist soldiers wait with hot tea and morphine. But not every landing is gentle. 8 men from 3 crews, Nielsen, Farrow, Hallmark, Spatz, and their gunners, drift too far east, straight into Japanese-occupied territory near Nanchang. Boots hit the ground running. Within hours, Kempe Tai bloodhounds are on the scent. By dawn on April 19, the Emperor's soldiers have their prize. 8 exhausted Americans, hands bound with telephone wire, kneeling in the dirt while a Japanese officer reads the sentence translated into broken English. You have bombed civilian areas. You are not prisoners of war. You are war criminals. The realization hits harder than any fist. For some of these men, the raid isn't the end of their war. It's only the beginning of their crucifixion. April 20th, 1942. The price of defiance. A makeshift prison courtyard, Nanchang, Japanese-occupied China. 8 American flyers kneel on gravel that still holds the night's frost. Their flight suits are torn, faces swollen from beatings, wrists raw where rope has bitten to the bone. A Kempe Tai captain paces in front of them, polished boots crunching like breaking teeth. Behind him, a Shinto priest in white robes sprinkles salt on the ground, purifying the site for what is about to happen. Lieutenant Bill Farrow, 24 years old from Darlington, South Carolina, lifts his head. Blood crusts his blonde hair where a rifle butt opened his scalp. He locks eyes with the Japanese officer and speaks in a voice steady enough to cut glass. Tell your emperor we bombed only military targets, and tell him more are coming. The captain's answer is a single nod to the firing squad. 6 rifles rise, 6 safeties click off. Farrow's lips move. No one will ever know if it was a prayer or a curse. Then the courtyard erupts in flame and thunder. Farrow, Hallmark, and Spatz die instantly, bodies slumping forward like marionettes with cut strings. The 5 enlisted men, Dieter, Fitzmaurice, Height, Nielsen, and Spatz's gunner, are spared the bullets, only to face something worse. They are marched to Shanghai's Bridge House prison, a concrete tomb where the Kempe Tai perfected the art of making men beg for death. For months, they endure the water treatment, forced to drink gallons until stomachs rupture. The electric chair, wired to car batteries, bamboo slivers under fingernails. Corporal Jacob DeShazer, a bombardier from Oregon, is beaten so badly his jaw hangs loose like a broken hinge. Yet in the darkness of his cell, he finds a tattered Bible left by a previous prisoner. He reads it by moonlight seeping through a slit window, and something shifts inside him. Rage becomes resolve. Back in free China, the other 62 raiders are not safe either. Japanese vengeance falls like a hammer on Zhejiang province. Entire villages that sheltered the Americans are erased. In one hamlet near Chuchao, soldiers lock 250 men, women, and children inside a temple and set it ablaze. Survivors are bayoneted as they crawl out. The official Japanese tally: 250,000 Chinese civilians killed in reprisal operations. Unofficial estimates whisper 500,000. Plague is deliberately spread, flea-infested bombs dropped on Ningbo and Kuzhou. The land itself becomes a graveyard. Jimmy Doolittle, hiding in a mountain monastery with a fractured ankle, hears the reports from Chinese runners and weeps for the first time since childhood. He believes he has failed. 64 men reached China, 3 dead, 8 captured, dozens injured. Planes lost, all 16. Damage to Japan, minimal. In his mind, the raid was a fiasco. He does not yet know that in Washington, President Roosevelt is grinning at a map, telling the press corps the bombers came from Shangri-La. He does not know that across America, millions who had tasted only defeat for 4 months suddenly stand taller. War bond sales triple overnight. Factory whistles blow in celebration. A nation that was on its knees is back on its feet, eyes blazing. And he cannot possibly know that in a Tokyo war room, Admiral Yamamoto is tracing a finger across the map toward a tiny atoll called Midway, muttering, "We must destroy the American carriers before they breed more Hornets." The blood on Chinese soil, the smoke over Tokyo, the 8 fresh graves outside Nanchang, none of it was wasted. Because every drop bought America something priceless: time, resolve, and the certainty that this war would not end until the rising sun was dragged down into the sea. June 4, 1942, the avalanche begins. 180 miles northwest of Midway Atoll, fog clings to the flight deck of the Akagi like the breath of a dying god. Admiral Chuichi Nagumo stands on the bridge, binoculars pressed to his eyes, watching his strike wave climb into the dawn. 81 aircraft, Val dive bombers, Kate torpedo planes, 0 escorts circle once, then turn south toward the American island. He allows himself a thin smile. This time the Americans will not escape. This time Japan will cut the head off the Pacific Fleet. He does not know that high above, hidden in the cloud ceiling, Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey is leading 30 dauntless dive bombers straight toward the heart of the Japanese carrier force. He does not know that the ghost of the Doolittle Raid is riding in every cockpit. Because the raid did something no strategist predicted. It forced Yamamoto to strike prematurely. The extended picket lines, the diverted destroyers, the aircraft pulled from the Solomon Islands to guard the home islands. Every ship and plane Nagumo now lacks is a direct consequence of 16 B-25s that flew over Tokyo 6 weeks ago. The Imperial Navy is stretched thin, arrogance replaced by paranoia, and paranoia makes men rush. McCluskey's Dauntlesses roll in from 19,000 feet, sun at their backs. The first 1,000-pound bomb punches through Akagi's flight deck exactly where Nagumo is standing 30 seconds earlier. Fuel hoses rupture, torpedoes cook off. In 6 minutes, the pride of the Pearl Harbor strike force is a floating torch. Kaga follows, then Soryu. Hiryu fights back, damages Yorktown. But by nightfall, she too burns to the waterline. 4 Japanese carriers lost in a single morning. The same number America lost at Pearl Harbor. Back in Tokyo, the news is kept secret for weeks. Civilians are told the fleet is advancing on schedule, but the generals know, the admirals know. And in a quiet room overlooking the palace gardens, Emperor Hirohito receives a single sheet of paper with the names of 3,057 sailors who will never come home. He stares at it for a long time. Then he asks, almost inaudibly, "Was it worth 16 bombers?" No one answers. Because the avalanche is no longer a metaphor. Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Saipan, Iwo Jima, Okinawa, every island the Marines storm, every carrier the shipyards launch, every B-29 that will one day rain fire on Tokyo again. All of them trace their lineage back to that rainy morning when Jimmy Doolittle proved the Pacific was not a Japanese lake. And 3 years later, almost to the day, August 15, 1945, noon. The Emperor's voice crackles over every radio in Japan. For the first time in history, the people hear their living god speak. He tells them the war has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage. In the Imperial Navy Hospital at Yokosuka, a one-armed admiral named Matome Ugaki listens to the broadcast, then calmly puts on his dress uniform. He climbs into a Yokosuka D-4Y Judy dive bomber, takes off alone, and flies south until his fuel runs out. His last radio message: "I go to follow my sailors." The rising sun sets, and somewhere in South Carolina, an old man with silver hair and a Congressional Medal of Honor hanging in a dusty frame hears the news on a crackling radio. Jimmy Doolittle closes his eyes, sees the faces of Pharaoh, Hallmark, and Spatz kneeling in that courtyard, and finally allows himself to believe what the world already knows. 16 bombers didn't just shock an empire, they broke it.